not only do we have Joe Biden arming Taiwanese separatists, he is also escalating his attacks and escalating arming Ukraine and supporting the Zelensky regime. As I covered at Nick and Knight, who is not serious at all for peace. That's why he called for Crimea. The narrative that comes from the West is that we are helping Ukraine defend itself and we got to defeat Russia for democracy. So in order to fight for democracy, we must support a country bombing and killing civilians and supporting weapons and ammunitions that was supported by a ban by 100 countries because it kills civilians. But we know that Ukraine has no track record of caring about civilians. They have committed atrocity against their own people, and that's why they're saying these weapons. And now I'm gonna read this article, and I'm not gonna read the article. I'll read the headline, and I'm gonna show you this clip of MSNBC because the clip of MSNBC is also another great breakdown. But I want you guys to see how they struggle to defend. They have no shame, so they do defend it, but they struggle to defend this unbelievable decision by the Biden administration that show they don't care about human rights or the Ukrainian people at all. What are cluster munitions? Biden defends decision to send controversial weapons to Ukraine. So if you're defending your country and you care about Ukrainian people like the NATO led pretend they do, why would you send bombs that will lead to more Ukrainians dying? Like you're defending the Ukrainian homeland. Why you need cluster bombs?
Right.
And they're saying, well, the Russians are using cluster bombs and they kill on civilians. They're like, all right, so what your answer to that is, let's use them and kill civilians too.
Right.
That's your answer? Go ahead, Colin.
But what's significant about cluster munitions, which is for people who don't know, essentially once you release, if you're flying them over a country and you release them, they may not necessarily detonate on impact. So essentially, these are landmines. So the U.S. is sending essentially landmines to Ukraine that can essentially kill their own.
And Colin, I was watching the White House press conference. I was thinking about streaming it. I just couldn't at the time. I might play the clip, but they asked the State Department goon during the press conference, how do you guys know that Ukraine is not going to use this on their own people? That was the question.
Exactly.
And he said, this is what he said. He said, well, when the Zelensky regime requested this, they wrote a letter promising they won't kill civilians, and that was his answer. They said in a letter that we pinky square, we pinky promise that we won't kill civilians. How do you know? That's why cluster bombs are banned by 100 countries, because you can't point it or you can't prevent the use of civilians' death and casualties. And they're going to cover that in the upcoming clip. But go ahead, Colin. I want you.
No, that was it. But that's just to tell your audience the significance of this, especially for who may not know. So these are dangerous, So the idea that the U.S. is using banned weapons, to in the line of, oh, we need to help Ukraine defeat Russia, when these very bombs essentially, might potentially hurt their own. And I wasn't going to say this, but I saw a clip with Pod Save America earlier where AOC happened to be on, and she was basically still like, oh, I support Joe Biden, all this kind of stuff, like, you support this? At least to Ilhan Omar's credit, she is trying to do something against all of this, because I know she kind of called out Elliott, I think, this week in Congress regarding his past transgressions in office.
She's writing a sternly written letter. Is that her answer?
Well, some type of legislation, but we know that's not going to mean a damn thing. But but you can give her some credit for at least trying to push the issue. But AOC is just like, at least with Pod Save America, did not mention this. Well, depending when she reported on this, it has not said anything. Actually, you know what? I take that back, because I knew about this story since last week. There were murmurs about this because I actually was going to report on this on 9 News last week. So this has been somewhat in the news somewhat since last week.
Yeah.
And no one on the squad has mentioned anything on this other than Ilhan Omar. Like,
So this is I'm gonna play this video. This is from my friend of the show, Nico. He makes a great videos on this. These videos are very short. Big shout out to Nico and Hotspot. They helped me. They taught me how to make these videos. By the way, they're very catchy. So let's
The
check.
U.S. is sending thousands of cluster bombs to Ukraine, despite the fact of being against U.S. law and also violating the treaties signed by hundreds of nations, including NATO nations. And do you want to know how we know it's a war crime?
There are reports of illegal cluster bombs and vacuum bombs being used by the Russians.
It would be. I don't have any confirmation of that. We have seen the reports. If that were true, it would potentially be a war crime.
We know because the U.S. said it. The U.S. actually said it's a war crime, not us, not Nico. Nico is an atheist. I'm just repeating what the U.S. said. But like Basaki just said, we don't even know if Russia actually used them. They're just unconfirmed reports. But we do know that Ukraine is absolutely about to use them because the U.S. is sending them there. But what makes this entire situation more nefarious is the fact that Ukraine was running low on munitions. Diplomats from Russia and Ukraine were meeting to talk about peace, likely because of that. So now because Biden is rearming Ukrainian forces with illegal cluster bombs, the likelihood that these peace talks will actually lead to meaningful negotiations and ultimately peace is dwindling more and more.
Nico House, the GOAT.
That's on point. Yeah, that's on point.
On point as always for my brother Nico. Once again, make sure you guys check out Hotspot. They are producing great content with leftist content creators. They're helping me make videos as well. As you guys see, they're helping me produce those quick videos. Nico is the king of them, as you guys see. So big shout out to Nico on that. Now you guys see Nico video. I'll just run through this fast quickly for time. I'm gonna give you guys take on this after I play the video. But you guys see?
I saw that. No, I saw that earlier before I came live. But yeah, but even before that, like I knew, as I said, I knew of this cluster bomb thing since last week. It really wasn't heavily reported on since that, like it's getting more prominence now. But what I didn't know was the idea that Russia and Ukraine were allegedly, well, not allegedly, but we're talking about peace. That I didn't know.
Yeah,
so,
now there's been rumors I've been hearing of the Biden administration for the first time showing signs that they're willing to do it because the Ukrainian offensive has stalled so much. And once again, I take these things with a grain of salt. Who knows how these things are getting leaked? But if these things are even being leaked, if these stories are even being talked about, if these peak talks are even happening, it just shows that the Ukrainian offensive has been a complete failure. But let's get to this clip here because this shows. I want to show you the real base take from Nico first. We had some base takes on this as well. But now let's see how MSNBC, the Joe Biden Defense Network, how do they justify this? And she tries. Trust me, she's going to have a hard time. They're going to have a hard time justifying this, but they're going to give it their best because they get paid millions to. Watch this. I found this video very interesting.
Following some breaking news, everybody, as well, with the Biden administration expected to announce today that the U.S. will, in fact, provide Ukraine with cluster munitions. That's according to administration and defense officials as well. These weapons, right, they disperse small bombs over a wide area
They're going to explain why
that risk harming civilian populations. More than 100 countries have signed a UN convention banning the use, by the way, of these types of munitions. Joining me now is NBC News Pentagon correspondent Courtney Cuby.
So that's what you bring
NBC
on.
News foreign correspondent Kelly.
You don't bring on a human rights activist. You know, I'm bring on a space person. So,
and this guy on the far right, he is brought on many times when the task when the propaganda is a very tall task to make.
Yes,
the guy on the right is the one they come to, and there's a lot
yeah,
of
I know
CIA
that
people
the U.S.
bring those
Ukraine
in.
pin he has on his lapel there. So
oh shit!
They know this they know there's gonna be one. Hell
I just think
job, so they had to bring on some guy from the Pentagon.
I just want
to go ahead, Zenkus.
It's something that sticks in my mind is how, I mean, all war is horrendous, and there's never been a war where innocent civilians don't die horrible deaths, and our bombs always find a way to fall on the houses of the poor and working class. But cluster bombs are particularly heinous. We used them during shock and awe in Iraq. and we lied about it. The United States said we had precision bombs. The media was talking about something called smart bombs. They just made this stuff up. They took the Pentagon talking points and they're like, we're using smart bombs. They only kill the bad guys. We were using cluster bombs in Iraq. What we did in that blitzkrieg, and I'm using that word on purpose, because it's what the Nazis' whole military was based on, that idea of just like overwhelming force. That shock and awe, what we did with those cluster bombs, killed so in the first 3 months of what we did in Iraq were horrible. The fact that they're even talking about, notice we're not a signatory to that we're even talking about giving them to Ukraine. Two things: escalating the war with the nuclear power, really bad idea, and killing all you start dropping bombs that end up killing Russian civilians. Support for the Russian war in Ukraine is going to go up. I mean, in Russia, I mean, nobody wants their house bombed.
And if you're defending Ukraine, why would you use cluster bombs that could explode later, that can kill civilians to defend your country? If your objective wasn't just to increase the profits of defense contractors, right? But go ahead, Zenkus.
And just how many kids in Afghanistan, that horrible, vicious war that Barack Obama, Nobel laureate, won the Nobel Prize for it. He tripled the troops in Afghanistan. How many kids going to gather firewood out in the in the woods got their limbs blown off from those bombs that exploded later and from mines? Like, these things are horrible. No country that cares about human rights would even manufacture them, let alone even have a conversation about using them.
Yeah, now Zenkus, look how, and I was watching this, and it was very interesting because I was so disgusted watching this. You guys, and I don't know if Colin and CJ can relate to this. Dave Chappelle had a joke about this. Like, have you ever seen anything so racist it's interesting? Like, damn, that was racist. And to be honest, it's a funny joke because it's relatable, because that happens sometimes. You see something so racist, like, damn, I kind of want to study this. Like, damn, that's like exactly the kind of shit we hear about. Like, this is the kind of psychopathic propaganda you hear about, and I was so disgusted. I was interested in this segment. Like, you guys really about to defend this? You guys really gonna do this? So let's watch this. I hyped it up enough. I rewind just a little bit for context.
More than 100 countries have signed a UN convention banning the use, by the way, of these types of munitions. Joining me now is NBC News Pentagon correspondent Courtney Kube, NBC News foreign correspondent Kelly Kobiea, who's on the ground for us in Kyiv. Also with us is Ambassador Bill Taylor, former U.S. ambassador to Ukraine and the vice president of Russia and Europe at the U.S. Institute of Peace. Welcome to you all, guys. Court, let me just start with you on this one. What more are you learning about this expected announcement from the Biden administration, and how do these munitions work exactly?
So we're learning that there are upwards of 10,000 of these munitions already sitting forward in Europe, ready to go into Ukraine as soon as the Biden administration makes that announcement and decides to send them in. So they could be in literally a matter of days. Yes. Now, what this means, the reason that the U.S. has made the decision to send these in now, after having talked about it for months and months and getting pressure from members of Congress to do so, is because of the need. There is a need to fulfill the constant difficulty in filling the 155 artillery round shortfall. So, in other words, Ukraine is using a ton of artillery on the battlefield.
She almost says the real reason here, by the way. Almost. So close. The real reason for military-industrial complex profit, by the way. You guys,
that's why I got so close. I got closer. I was like, wow, she's really about to say this? And then she stops. Because you can tell she's getting right there. She's like, oh, no, right. She backs off. Go ahead, Nick.
Sorry, CJ, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but you guys see how she caught herself? Mm-hmm. Like, it's about filling the orders for. Oh, no, I mean, it's for make sure that I'll go back 10 seconds so you guys see that part and now let it play.
Because of the need. There is a need to fulfill the constant difficulty in filling the 155 artillery round shortfall. So, in other words, Ukraine is using a ton of artillery on the battlefield every single day. These cluster munitions could have the ability to sort of backfill some of that. What that means is it's a munition that when it lands, it lets off a whole bunch of additional bomblets or small munitions over a wide area. Now that has the ability, depending on exactly what type of munition is in the warhead, it has the ability.
You said they call it a bomblet.
Bomblet.
Oh, they're adorable, those little bomblets. You're psycho.
Oh,
landmine. Say it. Landmine.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a cute little euphemism for a landmine. Absolutely. Great point, Colin Zenkus. Absolutely.
Vehicles. And to have an anti-personnel capability. What that means is some of the munitions will fragment. You've heard the word frag, right? That has the ability to wound and kill.
Talking to their boomer audience like they're kids. You heard the word frag, right? Trying to calmly explain war crimes to them. One thing I was literally watching it with the stream interest. Look at how she's talking to them like they're kids.
Fragment. You've heard the word frag, right? That has the ability to wound and kill the enemy on the other side. So it has a usefulness on the battlefield. Now, it is also a very controversial munition. You mentioned that the U.S. is not a signatory to this convention that more than 100 other countries are a signatory to. That is
You're
because
a champion of human rights.
In certain cases, there is a high dud rate for these munitions. What that means is when all these little bomblets disperse, some of them may not explode. And what we've seen in other battlefields is civilians.
Yeah, some motherfuckers might get their hand blown the fuck off, but not everybody. This is the defense. They're struggling. Hey, by the way, guys, there's some duds. So they don't always kill people, man. You guys ever consider it doesn't always kill? Listen to this.
Come upon them in sort of in a random area, and then they may have the potential to explode, wounding and killing civilians after the fact. That's why many human rights groups are against this. Now, we've put this question to a number of administration officials over the last several weeks. The specific munitions that are forward, that are ready to go to Ukraine anytime now, Yaz, they have a dud rate that ranges between 1.3% to 2.35%. So it's relatively low. That's one of the reasons that the U.S. is.
So the argument that she's making is we're not going to kill that many kids. We promise. That's the argument they're making. We're not going to kill that many. Did she say it was 0%? No. So she's saying that we're not going to kill that many.
No, I think. Am I wrong when she says the dud rate is really low, meaning these bombs actually work most of the time, meaning we'll kill more people? Is that what she's saying?
That's what she's saying. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But at the beginning of the segment, they're illegal, right? Did I miss that? Or did I think about that?
Oh, no.
You got that right.
Signed a letter saying.
So why
except for the U.S.
So why, and I'm not sure because I haven't seen, but why hasn't the question been asked? Why are we using them if they're illegal to use?
Or why isn't the U.S. a signatory that so many other human rights? You see how they just kind of skip over that,
right?
Like, why are human rights active? If we're the number one human rights leader, we're always pointing out human rights for other countries. Why aren't we signing this? Why aren't we signing this? That other human rights organization is saying this is what happens, and by your own admission. But the simple fact, this is what white supremacy does. It's just a few black and brown people. It's okay. You get what I'm saying? It's Madeleine Albright. Was it worth it? 500,000 kids killed? Yeah. Yes, in the long run, it's worth it. This is what white supremacy does. It makes black and brown lives mean less. It makes wherever it's being used. In this case, it's being used in Russia.
Right, but that's the thing. It's like,
but it means less than everybody else. Go ahead.
No, but that's exactly it. But it's like this is among their own. That's the thing. Like this isn't like the global South here. This is in Ukraine. So really, more people should be up in arms over this as to why we using these illegal weapons of mass destruction to allegedly counter Russia, who has not been proven that they have. I would argue probably not have used them, probably for this reason, because they don't want to take out their own. But the U.S. is willingly giving them away to Ukraine, but knowing that they'll use it. And if we kill some Ukrainian lives, who cares? Because you know, like
we gotta defend democracy.
right.
So who cares if we kill civilians? Because we fight for democracy. We fight for human rights. So we gotta kill civilians and engage in war crimes to do it. You know, that's fine for freedom for you. So this clip is almost finished. So let's finish the clip up. And we
0.3% to 2.35%. So it's relatively low. That's one of the reasons that the U.S. has made the decision to send these forward now. But even though the U.S. is not a signatory to this convention, the president still has to sign a waiver because the Dud rate is over 1% before these can actually be exported to Ukraine.
So he still has to approve it because they know specifically there will be killing civilians.
Yeah.
And he approves it. This is why I believe Joe Biden was elected. They know this guy is mentally checked out, so he's just a figurehead, and the weapons manufacturers is running this whole shit. They're running this whole shit. They need an empty vessel as a Joe Biden to do this shit. They need it because would a cognitive Joe Biden? I would say his track record would say yes, but if he was cognitive, at least he might pause. And the weapons manufacturers don't want any pause in the distribution of these weapons. They just play out this. Well, it took him 6 months to get him these deadly weapons. That makes it better because he's been refraining for 6 months and now he's doing it. That doesn't make it any all better. And I think that by them saying, "Oh, they didn't want to do these things," and this is like the third time I'm hearing about stuff they're sending to Ukraine. Oh, they didn't want it at first, but now there seems to be a need. They always want to make it seem like
it's a strategy
now. Yeah, go ahead.
Right.
Yeah, it's the same with the long range missile. They keep it's a strategy of constantly delaying it to the point where even the corporate media was like, "Yeah, it's the Biden administration always said they won't send this," but then a few weeks later they changed their tune. The same way Western countries said they wasn't going to send tanks, and then the UK changed their tune. The Biden administration changed their tune. They send tanks. It's a coordinated strategy by them. I'll read it to you by Glenn, and I'm pretty much done. Glenn said cluster bombs are banned by a convention signed by more than 100 countries. We covered this before, including many NATO allies, because of their huge civilian tolls. But don't worry, guys. Zelensky pinky swore to the United States that he won't kill civilians with this somehow. And he says in his bomb tweet as well, the goal of the United States the goal of the United States role in this war is not to protect Ukraine or Ukrainians. It is to destroy Ukraine at the altar of the broader goal of weakening Russia, as was done in Syria. These cluster bombs will kill Ukrainian civilians for years to come.
Yeah. And I checked Common Dreams because this is where, and depending when that clip was produced, allegedly Biden has reportedly signed off on them.
Yeah,
so
it's been done.
It's as of right now, it seems that it's done. It's a done deal.